All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's kick off. So inflation and the cost of living, how to survive and thrive. Don't know if anybody watched the spring statement. I'm a nerd. I watched it for you. I can tell you right now, there wasn't an awful lot in there to get excited about. But fundamentally, what is going on at the moment is we are going through unprecedented, and who is sick of that word already, unprecedented financial period. For the millennials and Gen Zers amongst us, this is like the third or fourth once in a lifetime thing that you're going through, having gone through a 2008 recession, a global pandemic, and now unusually and historically high inflation and interest rates. We are, by the way, nowhere near the worst in the world at the moment, which I don't know about you, when I got my electricity bill, didn't make me feel any better that the American ones are higher, but we are going through a global challenge at the moment. There is literally nothing happening in the UK that isn't happening everywhere else. So if you take comfort from that, great. If you don't, then sorry. We're going to try and give as much good news as we can, but unfortunately, there is a lot of not great news at the moment. So we're going to cover four main things. The first is inflation and interest rates. Going to try and understand what the hell is going on out there, and what it is that we as individuals can do about it in order to protect our own financial position and our own lifestyle. Going to look at what is a recession and are we heading towards one? I think we are. I think we might be heading towards a small mini recession, which will be fast, but I think there is one coming. What to do in the short term and how you can protect your money. Those are the main things we're going to cover. We're going to answer any questions as we go along as well. So inflation, what the hell is going on with inflation? And more immediately, what on earth is it? So inflation is an economic idea, which is that over time prices fluctuate. Prices go up, prices go down. That movement is known as inflation. I have tracked down a graph from the ONS who report this stuff on a monthly basis. The February numbers came out this morning at 7 a.m. And you can see that we are sitting at 6.2, which is a high, but it is by no stretch of the imagination the highest we have ever been. 1989, which for most people on this call will be long before you were even born. Inflation was at about 8.3, 8.4. So we have been here before, but not in an incredibly long time. And this is why it's throwing people off a bit. So what is inflation? Inflation is the idea that the thing that you bought yesterday for one price is today more expensive. So if I look on my desk, I have some lip gloss. This lip gloss, let's say last year cost me £1. This year costs me £1.20. That 20, that's the inflation. So if I had bought this in June 2015, when inflation was at 0, if we look at this graph, just for the purposes of explanation, if I bought it for £1 in June 2016, today I would be paying £1.06 because we have 6% inflation, right? So that's how it works. Now you might be thinking, well, that's not such a big deal over a number of years. But when you think about everything that you're spending and you think about how much money you spend on a monthly basis on your food, on your rent, on your electricity, on your petrol, it basically means that your money is going 6% less far than it used to. So you have effectively taken an effective 6% reduction in pay because your money is buying 6% less. And this is why it's a problem. So in the rest of the world, there are countries that have what is known as hyperinflation. Places like Venezuela come to mind, where the cost of goods will literally change on a daily basis. People get paid and they go straight away to the supermarket because the prices are changing so quickly that a loaf of bread today is $1 and tomorrow is $2 and the day after is $3. And this happens in a number of countries in the world. So we are seeing highs, but we're nowhere near kind of crises that we have seen historically or globally. Nonetheless, this is high for the UK and a lot of people are going to struggle. So if you are already struggling with affording everything that you need, a 6% increase in how much you're spending is going to impact on your pocket. And this is why people are concerned. So in terms of what you can do, unfortunately, inflation is one of those things that on a human level, there's very little that you can do to impact it. What you need to do is use your money in the best possible way because you cannot control inflation, right? Obviously. So there's four main ways that you can try and mitigate some of the problems on your money. The first is to keep an eye on your debt. If you can invest some of your savings, you get more as a general rule, as a return from investments than you do from savings. And people who have been in our webinars before will know that I'm very pro investing money, especially for the long term, especially if you are doing sensible investments like index funds and kind of big stable companies. I'm less of a fan of trading, but that's a whole other session. But if you do have savings and you are looking to save long term, you should consider investments. You will get a better return in the long run. Don't put off any big purchases. If prices are increasing, then something in a month's time is going to cost more than it is now. If you have to replace your fridge, for example, if that fridge becomes 6% more expensive in a couple of months' time and you're going to buy one anyway, buy it now. This is part of the problem with inflation, is that every month prices go up. So you want to be buying things now instead of waiting 12 months, unless you think it's going to come down. The current expectations, both from the OBR and the Chancellor and most economists, is that inflation is going to keep going up. It's going to hit 8 to 10% in April. In April-ish, it's then going to stabilize a little bit for the next 8 to 10 months and will then start to come down in mid to late 2023. So inflation is likely going to be with us for a while. Hence, if you're going to be buying anything, you want to be buying it earlier rather than later, and shop smarter. Figure out what you're buying, figure out what kind of stuff in what supermarket, and try and stretch your money as far as is possible. We are hearing a lot of reports for people who used to shop at Sainsbury's and are now shopping at Aldi, people who used to shop at Aldi who are now shopping at Lidl, people who are mixing it up. I'm mixing it up. So I'm buying all of my flour and pasta and kind of the boring staple stuff at the Lidl. And I keep buying, my tomatoes at Waitrose because I like my tomatoes and I don't like the cheaper ones, but I buy cheap everything else. So just be smart with how you're spending your money so that you're getting the maximum stuff for the minimum amount of money. Again, this is likely to be with us for the long run. If you don't like something or you don't enjoy it, you're going to stop doing it. So build smart habits and think about kind of the longer term thinking. Now, what tends to happen, government policy in response to inflation, and any economic majors in the room will know this, interest rates are one of the levers that governments have in order to control inflation. Inflation happens because a lot of people are buying stuff and it drives up the price of goods. That's generally how inflation works. In order to stop people or dampen demand, which is kind of how government speaks about dampen demand, we raise interest rates, because by raising interest rates, borrowing becomes more expensive. So people in general will borrow less, will spend less, and that's what brings inflation down. So what we're seeing is a very traditional response to inflation, which is the increase of interest rates. Now, what's funny about interest rates is that many people on this call will never have known anything other than sub 1% interest rates, because as you can see on this graph, since 2009, we've had sub 1% interest rates. Now, I remember, because I was working in finance, that in 2007, 2008, prior to the financial crisis, interest rates were close to 6%. So 1% was not normal by any stretch of the imagination. 1% was super duper low. So the fact that we're now heading back up to 1% and probably 2 and 3% is actually very much in line with historic economic behavior. So the Bank of England raises interest rates. In response to that, companies and individuals borrow less because borrowing has become more expensive, and that then should start to bring that inflation rate down and start to bring us back to some sort of normal. This is a very, very traditional way of managing inflation. And again, we are seeing this across the board. The Federal Reserve, which is the Bank of England equivalent in the United States, the Federal Reserve has been gradually increasing interest rates as well. What that means on a real level is, number one, if you have a mortgage, you will have already seen your mortgage rate increase, unless you were fixed during this period, in which case it'll increase when the term ends. And if you're carrying any sort of debt, that debt is going to get more expensive as the interest rate increase is passed on to the consumer. So what can you do in response to that? The first is you can protect your savings, i.e., put your savings in an ISA so that at least you're not also paying tax on stuff. Interest rates will go up on savings, but they won't go up in the same way as they will go up on debt, because this is just unfortunately how the market works. So if interest rates go up by 1%, almost guaranteed that full 1% will be passed on the debt, and maybe 0.5% will be passed on the savings. So if you have got savings, put them into an ISA, make sure that you are getting the best possible interest rate on that. And as I said before, if you are comfortable, if you are able, if you want to be investing, put some of that money at least into investments. If you are holding on to lump sum savings, but you are also carrying debt, I would urge you to consider using some of those savings to pay down some of your debt. Run your numbers, check to see if it makes sense. But something I speak about a lot on these calls is that £1 is not the same, that the £1 can be very different depending on where you put it. So if you have £1 and you're saving and you're getting 0.01, or you can use that pound to pay down debt, which has 19% interest, you're much better off paying the debt than putting the money into savings. So money behaves differently depending on the interest rate that is applied. Okay, if there's a question about that, please do ask, because I know that's complicated. But any money that you have can be used to increase savings or to reduce debt. And you need to consider whether the interest rate makes a difference to your decision. The last point, and then I will have a look at the questions. The last point is, again, keep an eye on your monthly outgoings. This is a time to try and hunker down a little bit and get some money together, pay off debt. Think about it as, which animal is it? Is it the squirrel that during the winter gathers all the nuts because during the winter there are no nuts? Think about this as a little bit of that time. Use your money in the best possible way in order to account for both of these. So I'm just going to quickly go to any questions and see if there's anything that I need to respond to, or if my team is looking after everything. Is this going to be recorded? Yes, we've covered that. Great. Okay. World is not a fun place right now. So Rachel, here's my thing. I'm the eternal optimist. I think we have to be optimistic, and I'm going to show you why in a second. Times being tough is just the way the world works. We have been living through an extraordinary period of peace and of financial prosperity. Whether you believe that or not, kind of objectively, that's what we've been living through. We are going to be going through a couple of tough years. We have been here before, we will be here again. But yeah, at the moment things are a little bit tough, and I get that. The financial bigwigs was commenting on Yahoo that we were heading for a recession again, and yes, and I would tend to agree with the bigwig. All the evidence seems to be pointing in that direction. Wasn't this the property boom period? As in this now recently? Yes, if you owned property.
Sorry, Vivi, it was when you were on the interest rate graph.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Yes, indeed. It was in 2008, but from 2008 it came back down, right? The prices of property kind of went up, crashed during 2008, and now we've had kind of record property price growth. Thanks, Danielle. Indeed, I assume the rise in interest rates affects students' loans as well. Okay, so no, which is some nice news, but not for anybody who is currently, okay. So 2 weeks ago, the Augur review, which if you're a student, you may or may not have been paying attention to, the Augur review was kind of being debated, and some of the initial findings have come out. They do not affect current students. So the repayment period, if you are not a current student, the repayment period will be going up. So instead of debt being written off after 30 years, it's going to be written off after 40 years. But the interest rate, which is being applied to student debt, is going to be scrapped. So it is only going to be inflation, not inflation plus 3%. So actually, that is the one positive thing that did come out of this report. It doesn't impact until next year, but no, inflation, thankfully, inflation will, but interest rates won't. So the repayments are actually a little bit better on that side, even though the rest of the recommendations are worse. What tips can you give people who want to start investing but have never done so before? So Jan, I'm going to see if we get into investing in this session. We do entire hours just on investing, and it's the kind of thing I don't like to zip through because it's quite involved and it's quite dangerous if you get it wrong. But let's see if we've got some time at the end. All right, so that is interest rates and inflation. I would urge you to do a little bit of reading and a little bit of thinking. It's worth setting aside an hour and thinking about how you're going to manage your money in this time. It'll be time well spent. Just make yourself a coffee and get your paperwork in order. 1 hour is worth it. So thank you very much, my team being fabulous. All right, so what is a recession? So at a very basic level, economies are driven by people spending money. This is just how economies work. And there are 3 different types of spenders. You've got people like us who just buy stuff, whether it's, important stuff like food and paying our rent, or whether it's luxury stuff like going on holidays or buying a new mobile phone. We buy stuff, and we are the reason why economies basically keep ticking over. The other group is companies who buy also, again, stuff. So at Blackbullion, we buy laptops and we buy electricity and we buy server capacity and we buy Zoom subscriptions. And then you've got government who actually buys an awful lot of stuff. Some of it public sector works like fire trucks, and some of it things like vaccines for the entire country and the enormous amount of money that goes into the NHS. When economies stop consuming, recessions happen. So this is a bit slow, apologies. So I just want to break it down for you. And we're going to break down the economy because I think things become a lot clearer when you can see how everything fits in together. So this is the beginning of what a simple economy looks like. You have the government and you have people. People receive benefits from the government and people pay tax to the government, right? Really simple, a portion of our economy. We then add what is known as the private sector. The private sector is everything other than the government. So it is startups, it is big businesses, it is charities, everything that isn't government. The vast majority of people in the country are employed by the private sector. And so the private sector buys people's time. Let's say I work for Barclays. I sell Barclays my time and Barclays pay me money for my time. They also pay tax on the profits that they generate, and they put money into a pension pot for me. This is what the private sector looks like. The last component is public services. So the NHS, the fire system, public schools, and the rest of it. Again, a certain number of people work for the public sector. Obviously, teachers would be a great example. The public sector then pays those workers for their time and pays them benefits, and the government closes the loop. So this is what our economy looks like, at kind of a simple but actually pretty comprehensive level. You've got three different groups. They kind of all work together. Everybody's spending money. A lot of people are paying taxes, and this is how the system generally works. And when things are good, and people are spending more and government is collecting more taxes and paying more benefits and private sector is paying more and hiring more people, the economy works really well. What happens when consumption drops, when people and companies spend less money because the economy is more difficult, the economy shrinks. And it kind of is that simple. What we're seeing at the moment is because of uncertainty in the market, because of the Ukraine situation, although the Ukraine situation is not having some of the impact, government is not being completely honest about some of these things. The people are spending less money because people are worried. Companies are spending less money because companies are worried. That's going to reduce how much money is going into the public sector and into the government sector, which means the government doesn't have enough money to do what it needs to do. And one thing I've excluded from here is public sector is debt, is national debt. We owe money to the Americans and to the Chinese and to the Japanese. As government has a bigger debt that it has to pay, and as we are all paying less money to the government has less money. And when the government has less money and they're putting less money into the system, the whole system shrinks. This is what happens with a recession. Okay. Now, here's why, while I agree that it's a crappy time, it happens a lot. It happens a lot. So for those of you who've been in sessions with me before, you'll recognize this graph. I use it a lot. This is the history of the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones is the equivalent of the FTSE. It's the stock exchange in America. It's one of the stock exchanges in America. And the gray vertical lines that you can see running all the way from the 1920s all the way to 2008 are recession periods. So you can see recession happens quite a lot. It's not a new thing. Markets contract and markets expand. It's just what happens. It's not good when it happens, but what we're going through now is not unusual. The ways in which we are heading towards a recession haven't happened in a long time. We haven't seen inflation like this in a long time. But recessions do happen quite a lot. The other thing to notice about recessions happening quite a lot is that we come out of recessions as well. So the question is, how do you survive recession? And then how do you thrive post-recession? And those are the things to kind of hang on to. The fact that things are a bit rubbish and very rubbish for a lot of people sucks, and government is going to have to do more. And don't get me started about the politics today, but the recession will end. And the question is, in what position are you personally going to be in when that happens? And this is why managing your debt, having some savings, making sure that you're budgeting, being careful about how you spend your money will enable you to get through the recession, hopefully with minimal problem, and then be able to take off after the recession ends. And the great thing about being a student, and it probably doesn't feel like this, but the great thing about being a student is, to a certain degree, you are shielded from some of these things because universities have support to catch you if there's a problem. So if you have a problem, speak to student services, go and ask for support. Once you leave university, a lot of that safety net disappears. And this is why a recession while you're studying sucks, but it's not catastrophic in the way that is being spoken about. What's going to be increasingly important for all of us, and I'm just going to take off my economic hat for a second and put on my human hat, is ignoring the noise around. It's very easy to think that everything is terrible. Everything's bad on Instagram. Everything's terrible on Twitter. We've got wars. We've got economic problems. We've got health. Remove some of that noise from your world and understand for yourself how you can make sure that your situation is good. Because if your situation is manageable, you can manage your mental health, you can manage your distress, and you can help the people around you. So yes, recessions happen. Yes, we're probably heading for one. We will come out of it. So if you look at the thickness of the gray lines, that's how long the recession lasted. If you look at 1929, that was the Great Depression. That lasted like 5-6 years. But if you look at 1987, which was a steep drop, a lot of people lost a lot of money. It lasted a matter of months. The recession for the dip in COVID lasted a matter of weeks. So we're going to see how long this lasts, but think forward and ignore some of the noise, because it's going to be bad news for the next couple of months. Turn off the television or Twitter or wherever you get your news from. All right. So let's talk about some tips and hacks, because that's what's important. So how do we get through it? I'm not going to read each of these because you can all read in your own, in your own good time, but do feel free to take a screenshot or rewatch this later. The most important, I think, the most important things to do is to be honest with yourself about where you're at. How much money are you spending? How much money is coming in? Where is the money coming from? Where is the money going? And be intentional with where your money goes. So if you have, to lean into a cliche, if you have been buying avocado toast every week, maybe you can put that money to better use. If you've been wanting to start a little side hustle on the side, selling stuff on Etsy, now's a great time to do it, right? Be intentional with where your money is coming from, be intentional with where your money is going, and ask for help if you need it. Don't try and deal with problems alone. Please don't. We hear such awful, awful stories of people who were too embarrassed to ask for help or didn't feel that they were worthy of help. You are worthy, and don't be embarrassed. Worst comes to worst, you can always direct message us on Instagram, but please do ask for help if you need it. So what does being intentional with your money look like? What does it mean? It means developing some goals and having a bit of a plan in place. So if you can do that, you can try and hopefully keep some of the stress to the side. Don't beat yourself up over what's going on. This is bigger than all of us. So just kind of accept that it's there and kind of try and push it out of your out of sight. Fear, worry, and regret at this point, or at any point really, again, park them from a mental health perspective. Look at what behavior is good for you with your money. And this is really the start of the planning journey, because it is very difficult to plan anything when you're feeling like everything is a little bit out of control. So if you think about how you plan a holiday, right? Where do I want to go? Right? I want to go to the Maldives. I wish I want to go to the Maldives, and I'm going to go on these dates, and I can afford this kind of hotel, and I need to take with me these kind of clothes, and I want to go with my best friend. That's the kind of planning you need to do with your money. Okay, so the first thing to do is create a budget. I know the B word, everybody hates it. It sucks. If you can get a budget, you can get your money under control. Trust me, you will feel better. Trust me. Take some control over your debt. I'm not referring to student debt unless you are a graduate. I'm talking about all other debt. I'm talking about credit cards. I'm talking about buy now, pay later, or any installment money like you owe on PayPal or Klarna. Certainly, if you've got any payday loan debt, if you've got an overdraft, if you're in an unauthorized overdraft, see what you can do about that. Take control of your debt. Have a piece of paper that shows what you owe, how much you owe, who you owe it to. Use the Blackbullion debt pathways. We go through all of this in a lot more detail. Get control of your debt. The debt is what's going to get more expensive over these coming few months. The debt is the big problem. Try, if you can at all, have an emergency fund sorted. Even £300 or £400 in an emergency fund will make you sleep better, because you'll know that if there's a problem, you have some money. Saving for an emergency fund is a little bit more tricky when you've got a lot of debt. Focus on the debt. But once you feel your debt is under control, or if your debt is under control, try and put some money into an emergency fund. It is amazing the difference that you will feel if you have some money aside if you need it. Because if we've learned one thing over the last 2 years, it's that things happen. Make sure you got some money to take care of them. And then, of course, because it's me, I'm always going to say, get educated, read, learn. You know, the amount of information that is out there is staggering. Decide that you are going to get more educated about your money going forward. So things like investing, things like cryptocurrency, there's an awful lot of financial knowledge out there. The more of it you have, the better off you will be. And of course, there's my book. And if you're not following us on Instagram, do that, because we're giving it away. Do you see what I did there? All right. In terms of some foundations, some really like simple things that you can do, which only require you to have the discipline to do them. The first is trim your waste. Think about the things that you're buying that you don't really need. You buy it because it's a habit. It used to be, I used to notice that I used to buy a coffee on the way to the office every day. My team will tell you, before COVID, because I walked past the coffee shop and I used to have a nice little chat with the lady, and I bought a coffee every day. And then once I started working from home, all of a sudden there was an extra like £25 a week because I wasn't buying takeaway coffee, right? So had I thought about it and kind of gone, actually, can I do something better with that 25 quid? I may not have bought it every day. I might have, because it's budgeted for, but think about where you're wasting money and whether it is in fact waste. Think carefully when you spend. That's it. At the end of the day, if you want the coffee, have the coffee, but make sure that you're buying the coffee because you want it, not just because it's a habit. Be smart about your debt. Again, I'm banging on about this. Increasing your income is something that I speak about in every session. The thing about budgeting, and we're about to get into it, is there is only so much you can cut out of your week, month, year, right? There is a certain amount of money that you have to spend. You have to eat. You have to have a roof over your head. You have to have electricity, right? There are things that you simply have to have. And so the question is, how much can you cut? Because there is a limit to how much you can cut, but there is no limit to how much money you can make. So if you think in terms of a floor and the ceiling, there's a floor. And once you hit the floor, you're kind of done. But the sky's the limit in terms of earning money. So if you can, if you're interested in it, if it doesn't impact on your studies, increasing how much money you have coming in is really important. There are a couple of easy ways to do it, especially as a student. The first is there are tens of millions of pounds of scholarships and bursaries that are available to students. A lot of that money is never applied for. If you go to somewhere like the Scholarship Hub, which I think is the scholarship.hub.uk, sign up, it'll point you towards a whole bunch of different scholarships and bursaries. Spend a couple of hours applying for anything that might be right for you. Often they're based on gender, or they're based on race, academic performance, sporting performance. There's a vegetarian one. There's all sorts of fantastic free money out there. Really easy way to increase how much money you have coming in. Spend a couple of hours, apply for everything that might be appropriate for you. Of course, there are side hustles. We know a lot of students who are freelancing, selling stuff on Etsy, using Instagram to promote product. There's any number of ways you can make extra money if you can, without impacting on your studies, which is your primary reason for being at university. Then definitely it's worth your time. Otherwise, summer jobs, fantastic. And the weather's getting nice. COVID hopefully is kind of gone. Get a Christmas job, get a summer job, put some money together so that you've got it when you need it. Use it in an emergency fund if you're able to do that and you don't have huge, you don't have debts that you need to cover, and spend less than you make. So these are kind of like how you build your strong foundations. Money is actually pretty straightforward. Getting your hands on it, not so easy. But what you do with it once you do have it is basically this. Be smart about how you're spending it. Don't spend on stuff that you don't need. Earn as much money as you can, pay off your debt, have an emergency fund. If you can do those things, you will sleep well at night, I promise, if you've got a good pillow and a good bed. But if you have an emergency fund, you can buy a good pillow and a good bed, see? All right, a couple of questions. I'm just going to have a look. Is it a good time to get a mortgage considering interest rates are bound to go up? Is it advisable to wait? Look, if you're in a position to be able to afford to get a mortgage, mortgages, so property tends to go up and property tends to go down. It's not that predictable. Funny things happen. If you can afford to get a mortgage, your best thing to do really is to get a mortgage, because in a number of years' time, property will be up, because property only heads in one direction. It has peaks and troughs, but property, especially in major cities, in developed countries. But I'm not giving any advice on this. If you've got enough money for a mortgage, it's, always a good time to look at whether it's the right time. I can't tell you whether or not now, but certainly interest rates are going to go up. That's for sure. But low interest rates is not the reason to get a mortgage. It is one of many factors that you should consider. Inside the platform, there is some stuff on mortgages. We do run whole sessions on it. So if you're following us on social media, you'll see when the next one is. But if you've managed to save enough money for a mortgage, then I salute you, because that is very difficult. What about grants when you suspend your studies? So as a general rule, scholarships, bursaries, and grants are for students. But if you then drop out, a lot of them, those, once you've got the money is in your bank account. That's different sometimes for some university ones, which might get paid, in installments. And if you leave, you don't get the rest. It'll really depend on the scholarships and bursaries. If you are thinking about suspending your studies because of money, can I humbly suggest you speak with your university, because there's probably help there to help you to not have to suspend or step away from your studies. Definitely ask for help. Okay, the investment, and then mortgages 101. There you go. Fantastic. All right. So again, not going to read them, screenshot them. But in terms of silly financial mistakes that people make, we see these kinds of things all the time. Saving money actually takes a little bit of effort. You have to look up and down on the supermarket shelf. You have to walk an extra 5 minutes to not go to the corner store. But if you know some of the tricks that are being used to make you spend more money, then you'll be smarter about how you spend the money. Look for the yellow stickers at the supermarket. Find the vegetables that are a little bit wonky. A wonky banana tastes exactly the same as a straight banana. It doesn't make sense to pay more money because it's perfectly looking. You want something that's going to kind of do the job, right? Learn how to cook. Make sure that you keep an eye on your credit score. All of these things make a huge, huge difference if you can get them right. But make sure, again, you ask for help, you do as much learning as you can. It's the best possible way of getting your finances in the best possible shape that they can be in. So there's two main levers that I want to kind of talk about. I've already touched on the fact that budgeting is, I believe, and we believe as a company, one of the most powerful things that you can do for your money, literally. And this is how I like to explain it. And again, those of you that have been in sessions before will have seen this graph before. If you think about your money coming in, the amount of money that's coming in as the center rectangle, on the left-hand side, you're spending more money than you have coming in. So the light purple area at the top, that's the additional money that you're spending. That is the money that gets you into debt. Because if you are spending more money than you have, you're having to fund that somehow. You're having to get that money from somewhere. And usually the way that you're getting that is through credit. So you're using a credit card, a payday loan, an overdraft, borrowing money from a friend. That difference there, that's where you ultimately end up getting in trouble financially. By the way, that is where most people in Britain live, is on that left-hand, in that left-hand rectangle. So it's not an unusual position. It is unfortunately where most people are. But most people are not in a great financial position. And our intention is to help you be in a great financial position. So on the left-hand side, the differential is funded by debt. That debt is getting more expensive with interest rates, as we've said, which means that servicing that debt, what's known as servicing the debt, paying the debt and the interest becomes increasingly difficult. So if you borrow £100 at a 5% interest rate, at the end of the year, you have to pay back 105. But if that 5% becomes 20%, you now have to pay back 120, right? So as interest rates go up, the amount of money that you owe gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So not overspending is the magic, because if you're only spending what you have coming in, you're not getting into debt. Now, again, that's hard as a student. We know that the maintenance loan is not high enough for most students. We are lobbying government to look at this. So I understand and acknowledge and don't criticize if you're on the left-hand side. We don't judge this. We know that this is a difficult situation, but ideally you want to look at how to be in the middle. Most ideally, you want to look at how you're on the right-hand side, which is when you're spending less than is coming in. And there, the light purple difference, that is then free money for you to do as you wish. So you can start a business, change jobs, get into a nicer apartment, get out of a bad relationship, which is something I'm personally very worried about with people stuck in bad relationships because of money, which happens a lot. So you want to ideally be spending what you have or less than you have coming in. That's how you get financial control. And it can take time to move from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. But if you have a plan to get there, you are already doing kind of a better job for your money than you were doing before. Okay. So I can see there's a bunch of questions that come in while I'm talking. So let me just quickly check. Oh, a lot of caps lock. All right. How do we check our credit score? Yes, so Experian, which I know a couple of people are mentioning, and Clear Score as well. You can get a free credit check. You can get a free credit check. You can pay £2 and get a printed report that is sent to you, or you can get a free credit check online. There is a credit score messaging inside the Blackbullion platform. We are talking to Experian about getting a free student one, so you get the comprehensive one for nothing. So stay tuned about that. But most of these credit score companies will give you a free score or report or idea. Experian definitely, Clear Score is another, Equifax is another. Those are kind of the three big ones. You can also get a boost score. Exactly, excellent. Also, I've heard that having a credit card and buying a little on it and paying it off each month is good for your credit score. So yes, that's correct. It is the irony of ironies that the worst way to have a good credit score is to not have any credit. So you have to have a credit card in order to build a credit score. And what you're suggesting is exactly right. You get a credit score, you buy one thing on it each month, you pay it off in full each month, you build your credit score, and you don't get into debt. What I often recommend is put one of your subscriptions on it. So like your Amazon Prime for $7.99 a month, and have a direct debit, paying it off every single month. Because what a credit score is an indication to lenders that you can handle debt. That's what a credit score is. All it does is say to a lender, like a mortgage company, that if they lend you money, you have a good history of paying that money back. And that's why a credit card is so important and ridiculous, but that's why the system is so important. So exactly what you're suggesting, get a credit card, get a low limit. Don't ever use the credit card. Set up one subscription and set up one standing order to pay it off. And that's it. That's it. Don't use the card, because that defeats the purpose. Then you actually do get into debt. Okay. If anything there's not clear, let me know and we'll go over it again. What effect do you think the crisis will have on credit scores? So hopefully what I've just said, it makes it a little bit clearer. The recession, if it comes, won't impact on credit scores. It'll impact on people's ability to have a good score. So again, a credit score is a reflection of how well you handle debt. So if you're handling your debt well, then your credit score will be good, recession or no recession. If you don't handle debt well, your credit score will be bad, recession or no recession. So if you're thinking from a credit score perspective, think in terms of how you can pay off your debts on a regular and consistent basis. And that means not spending more than you can afford, not using unauthorized overdrafts. So if you have an overdraft of £1,000 and you spend £1,002, the £2 is known as an unauthorized spend, and that will impact on your credit score. So only use the debt that you have access to. And as was suggested earlier, get a small credit card, buy one thing on it, pay it off each month, and that'll boost up your credit score. Credit scores are important. They're not fundamentally crucial, but they are important. If you want to get a mortgage and your credit score is bad, you will not get a mortgage. So at that point, the credit score becomes crucially important. Experian, give you a selection recommended. Okay, great. So lot of people talking about Experian. Virgin, usually your bank, as you have a credit rating with them. Yes, I would agree with all of that analysis from Katrina. Go to your bank first. Absolutely. Is there anything specific to look out for when applying for credit cards, or can you just apply? I mean, look out for what the rate is, but if you're going to be using it as I've suggested and paying it off each month, that's the bit that's important. The bit that's important with credit cards is your behavior, not what the credit card is. Because if your behavior is to spend £8 every month and pay off that £8 every month, it doesn't matter what credit card you have, it'll have the same impact. As your credit score improves and as your behavior with credit cards improves, the credit card companies will give you increasingly higher and higher and higher limits. Later on, when you want to get a mortgage, if you've got a credit card with a very high limit, that will play very well in your favor, but not if you've spent all of the money on it. Okay, so I don't want to spend all of our time talking about credit cards. So here's the only thing. If you are worried about your credit score and you want to deal with it via a credit card, look at a credit card with the smallest possible limit, put one subscription on it, pay that subscription off each month. That's it. Don't spend on it. Don't use it for anything else. Finding a nice pair of shoes or a holiday on discount is not an emergency. Use it only for the reason of increasing your credit score. And then come back to me in 2 years' time or a year's time when you graduate, and we can talk about what happens next. That's the only thing to be doing right now with credit cards. If you don't have the discipline to do that, don't get a credit card. Okay? I told you I would tell you the truth. Pleasure, lowest APR 18.19. Yes, but again, you'll only pay interest if you don't pay it off in full. Okay, because the first 30 days on a credit card are interest free. So if you buy something and you pay it off fully at the end of the month, you don't pay any interest. Is there something we should expect in the new financial year given the inflation rate? Marco, I'm not really sure what you mean. If you could just give me a bit more detail. The ISA is going to reset. I mean, that's going to happen with the new financial year, but I'm not sure that's what you mean. So just let me know. What limit should the credit card have? Look, ideally, your credit card should have a limit of like £1,000, £500. Like you really want the lowest possible limit. Within 2 years, they'll increase it because that's how credit card companies work. but all you're doing is putting on it a small amount of money. So get the lowest card that you can to manage your own impulses. Do you want it for purchases or balance transfer? Okay, we've kind of covered that. I'm sorry, I need to leave. Session's been great. Thank you. You're welcome, indeed. Thank you, team. That's wonderful. Thank you. Credit cards, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fantastic. All right. Thank you, Shandon. Much appreciated. All right. So that's budgeting, and we've covered more about credit scoring than I would have thought, which is great. 2 types of spending. The first is the good. This is the stuff that you buy to stay alive, which is really important. Eat properly. We hear of students who are like living on baked beans. First of all, woohoo. But that's also just not healthy. So eat properly, look after your health. University costs money for success. You need to buy textbooks. You need to, you want to sign up to societies. You want to be meeting people. You want to be going out with friends. The student experience is really important on campus. These are the good things to spend money on. The bad things, to paraphrase Fight Club, is the stuff that you buy with money that you don't have, that you don't want, to impress people that you don't really care about, who don't really care about you. This is where a lot of our spending goes. This is where Instagram and TikTok kind of drive us. This is the social pressure that we have to buy stuff. If you're using your money to buy stuff that you don't even want, you're using your money wrong. You just are. So this is the kind of thing that you really want to be kind of chucking out of your life. I have put what I believe are some of the naughty things that really we could be saving a lot of money if we stop doing them. The first is cigarettes. Again, no judgment. If you're a smoker, that's your right. If you quit, it'll be better for your health. It'll be better for your lungs. People like me won't do this when they walk past you. And also you will save a lot of money. So I am kind of pushing the no smoking thing just because it's such a waste of money and it's bad for your health. Alongside that, of course, too much alcohol, although we are drinking less, which is really interesting. What we are referring to as tech-enabled convenience is actually where a lot of students are spending a lot of money. Your Ubers, your Zaps, your Deliveroo's. Anything where you are trading money for convenience is something that you should consider. A lot of students we know are taking an Uber instead of a bus. I get the temptation for doing that. It's not always, I think, easy to justify spending 10 quid on an Uber instead of £1 on a bus. Unless, of course, it's nighttime, there is a security issue, there's a safety issue, you're traveling by, you're walking by yourself through the dark. Obviously, safety always comes first, always, and is priceless. But if it's the middle of the day and it's drizzling a little bit and you just can't be bothered, you need to think about whether, getting a little bit wet or putting up an umbrella might be better than wasting money with Uber. But don't anybody come back and talk to me about safety, because safety for me is a non-negotiable. You do what you need to do to get home safe, obviously. Deliveroo is great as a treat if it's actually just your regular weekly diet. You're probably not using your money in the best possible way. The number of apps that people are paying for and spending a lot of money on in-app purchases. Again, think twice about whether these are things that you want. Do you really need the latest pair of Nikes for your avatar inside the metaverse? I mean, maybe you do. Maybe something to think about. So just think about what are the things that you're spending money on that actually don't add that much value to your life, but do take a lot of money out of your pocket. Again, not judgy, to each their own, but be thoughtful about how you're spending your money. Not going to read this, screenshot it. Bunch of different ways that you can reduce and cut your spending. For those of you who know me, I'm a big fan of cooking. I think cooking is great for the soul. It's great for making friends. It's much, much better for your health. It's a fantastic life skill. You'll be able to impress anyone, and you'll save a lot of money by buying ingredients instead of food. But there's a whole bunch of other things in there. So do feel free to please take a screenshot on 3, on 2, on 1. That would have worked better if it had actually gone. And as I said, second income or first income, if it doesn't impact on your education, what you don't want to be doing is making an extra 20 quid a month, but actually ruining your chances of getting the marks that you want to get and the job that you want to get afterwards. It is a balancing act. In economics, it is known as opportunity cost, this idea that you can't do everything. And by doing one thing, you can't do something else. Make sure that your primary focus is on getting the best possible experience while you're studying, getting the best possible marks, if that's important to you while you're studying. But if you are able to make some money on the side, get some experience, get some employability skills, build up your resume, all of those great things, then hustling up, you know, some side money, a side hustle, part-time work, summer work will absolutely be a great thing, but not if it comes at the cost of overloading your schedule. So, you know, be smart about what you want. And again, some tips and hacks, because we know that you guys love that. And I'm just quickly going to check on some of the questions that I can see. Kept getting charged with Uber after taking it once in an emergency. Yeah, be careful. That's a great point, Katrina. Be careful with using, really using anybody that you give them your credit card or bank card, not your credit card, because first of all, there are glitches, but there's also deliberate fraud. So just be very, very careful. Again, be very careful with who you give your money to. Anybody seen the Inventing Anna and all of those things? There's a lot of fraudsters out there, and they don't always look the way that we think they do. Teachers get a discount for teachers on practically everything. Fantastic. There are a number of different types of discount cards available for all sorts of students. So make sure that you're getting everything that you can. Again, make sure that you're getting all the free money, and discounts is just free money that you are able to access. Get the NUS card if you think it's worthwhile. Get the travel card if you think it's worthwhile. Run your numbers and check. If you never use the train, then the travel card is of no use to you. If your parents live in Edinburgh and you're studying in London and you're going up every 6 to 8 weeks, then having a travel card is absolutely worth it. Make sure that you are running your numbers and checking your finances. And then last couple of things, get yourself a budgeting tool or app. We have one inside the Blackbullion platform. There's another bunch that we kind of point to. I don't recommend any one over another one. These are just ones that are out there. Pick the one that works best for you. Let the technology do the heavy lifting. That's the point of technology. So if you're not already, make sure that you're using the kind of apps that can be helpful. And because in every session, people are asking what to read, my team will tell you I have like a proper book addiction. If I could stop spending money on books, I could probably like buy Westminster Castle. But if you are looking, Westminster's not a castle. Westminster Palace, it's a palace. I could afford a palace. It's been a long day. So some of these are quite old books, and they are the best. Think and Grow Rich, I highly, highly recommend. The Richest Man in Babylon, I think, is possibly the best book ever written about money. It's a fable. It's only about this big, and absolutely worth a read. All of them are. So if you are looking to get more educated about money, and if you're not, stay on the line and I will tell you why you're being naughty and you should be learning more about money. These are some of the things you want to be digging into. And again, if you're following us on Instagram, you might meet a copy of my book. See what I did there? So make sure that you're catching up on all of the books that you can. Few more tips and hacks, because people are always asking. So please feel free to screenshot on 3, on 2, on 1, and then a couple of podcasts for you as well. I quite like the last one. There are a lot coming out all of the time, so find one that works well for you. There is a lot of knowledge out there. There's a lot of information out there. Make sure that you are going to places by people who actually know what they're talking about. There's also a lot of charlatans out there, especially on TikTok and Instagram, who one day are selling vitamins and the next day they're selling cryptocurrency trading platforms. Be very, very careful who you're following. If you're not sure, DM us on Insta. We'll tell you if they're legit or not. Like, seriously, there's a lot of people losing a lot of money following people who should stick to selling vitamins. Like, good for them, but be very careful who you're following. Money is not the kind of place you want to be listening to everyone. And I believe that is the end of our little session. So